Uh, as a lot of you know, I make a lot of different random apps that basically give you guys access and a way to pull data and whatnot from our database. One of the biggest, easiest use case scenarios that we've got is, this gets asked so many times, is how many orgs do we have in X industry? Happens all the time. You know, sales are always looking for ways to say, oh, we have this many orgs in this industry, so you're just going to be another one of these. So I have an app for that. If you look, that's right here with industries. So description, provides a quick look at each of our industries, tells how many orgs exist in each industry, their average and max size, response rates by question type. So click on the link. And most of these apps are permission exclusive. I don't have a way yet to host them all on the same application, so to speak. So each one of them is a living application on its own. So in order to get access to them, I need to know who wants access to each individual app on its own, which is why for now they're hosted all on their own, and why I wanted to show everyone all the apps right now, because some of these apps you might want, some of the apps you don't really care about, but I need to know which ones you do. So anyways, here's the industries app. And so it just lists out each one of our industries that we have, the number of orgs that exist in them, the average size of those industries, the maximum seat count for those industries, and then just some extra stats like response rates, the average response rates, each one of the question types. That way you guys can know how, you know, what they should expect for a response rate if they get that sort of question. Right here, scale, binary, and text response rate. So 55%, 50%, 42% for arts and entertainment. And it varies. Yep, the scale is the 1 through 10 question. Binary are the yes, no's, and text are the free form. And for the most part, you can see that, you know, response rates don't vary too much. They kind of stick around the high 40s to mid 60s. So at the very least, you could say, you know, the average response rate is about 50% if you ever get that question. As well, I'm sure you guys have been asked this as far as CSMs is, I'm in the industry benchmark. How many orgs exist for that benchmark? You know, they don't always know, and they don't always have a good number in their head, but at the very least, they could see this sort of information as to know how many orgs exist in the industry that they're in, so that they know whether or not it's a good comparison. It also gives people a reason to get out of this other category, because right now we have so many orgs that are just pulled into the other group. And that's because right now other is the default. And so you have to be opting out of other so that you can be placed into the correct grouping. The client and sales or CSMs working with the clients would help them set that up. I don't know if we have that capability yet. I don't think we force them to do anything yet, but it could be something that we've talked about. I think Matt has put something in AHA saying, hey, we should have some sort of flag to say initially, hey, you're in the other org or other industry. Let's get you moving to the appropriate one if you need to move. We do that, I think. It's just a communication thing between our admin database and something like Salesforce, where I don't know if that sort of thing is aligned yet. Mm-hmm. For example, cloud services, e-commerce, whatever else. So that one bucket, some people are looking for something else, they might actually focus on that. Yeah, we just have to get that set up essentially with the admin database. And essentially most of this information, I can make apps to do just about anything as long as the data exists in some shape or form in the admin database, because that's really the starting point for me, or HubSpot or Salesforce. But I have to have some sort of starting point. I can't actually just create the data myself. So that's kind of where I'm limited in some cases. But yeah, with tags, if we get something like that, we can start tagging industries with multiple industries so that we can do these sorting and whatnot appropriately. All right, so another use case could be, hey, I'm doing outbound email marketing. How do I make sure that I don't email anybody that actually gets Tiny Pulse right now? Because you never know who might add their Gmail address or their random other address. You just don't always know. It's kind of a pain in the ass to tell. Well, there's an app for that, an email scrubber. Basically, this thing will take a CSV that you can upload into the app, and then it will spit out a downloadable CSV that will tag each line with, hey, we have their domain in our database, or hey, we have their literal email address in our database. So you can upload a file, then re-download that file, or you can actually check individual email addresses. For example, my email address is in there as an exact email address and a domain match, probably because I was testing Tiny Pulse at some point, so it's in there. So you can just do that for quick tests, or do big lists so that when you're doing email outbound marketing, you don't step on people that are already using us. It does not scrub Salesforce currently. It scrubs our admin database for all the essentially the entire receivers table. All right, so another potential use case would be, how do I track admins or orgs and actually whether or not they're using the product? We give our product out. We don't really know if they're actually using the product, and it could be that they're not happy because they're not actually putting in the work. The CSM Super app here can tell you that sort of information. It prints out right now a report card based on all sorts of different metrics. So I'm going to do a search for an organization. What's a random org? Somebody said an org name that we've got that they want to check some information on. I heard HubSpot. So let's see, which one is the biggest? HubSpot sales. Let's see. Does anyone know which HubSpot is likely the biggest that we're using? The sales one? All right. Well, yeah, it's the number of seats. I just didn't know if that was the nice current one. All right, so we'll plug in that org ID, and then I'm just going to go ahead and run the report. And this is one of the more recent apps that I got, so it actually gives you information on what it's actually doing. Some of the older apps that I made and some of the older maps that still exist, they don't really tell you a lot of information, but as time goes on, I figure out new and new ways to do UI on this. So this actually tells you what it's doing while it's doing it, so that you're not just sitting here thinking, oh, did the app actually do anything? So right now it's just pulling all the data from HubSpot, and it's pulling their comments, suggestions, their actual responses. It's pulling private messages. And then what it'll end up doing is it's going to compare their numbers versus the average org in all of their numbers. So response rates, the average orgs, cheers per user, the average org's admin activity. It'll actually pull all that so that they can get a report on how their org is doing versus other orgs. And I think the CSMs, you guys are using this for like 30, 60, 90 day stuff right now. But sales, you guys can use these for some of your pilot accounts if they're actively using it. While that's pulling, there's other information that you can pull here regarding admin activity, and that will actually list out for whatever organization you pull. It'll list out all the admins for that organization, and then it'll list out within the date range how many private messages they've sent, the last time they actually did anything on our website. I would say log in, but we don't actually really log in that often anymore, so that's a really bad stat. So instead, it's just the last time they did something, like went on the account and sent a private message, or sent a cheers, or just did some sort of activity. It's going to record that, and then you can know how many days it's been since those admins actually did anything. So you can pick out, oh, these people say that, oh, the response rates are down, but they haven't logged in the last 2 weeks. So what would they know? So you can, call them out on what they're doing. Oh, I think the report card's in. All right, so the report card's done. So now we have all sorts of information on, the number of percent of closed surveys that they've had with shareback reports, the percent of comments and suggestions with private messages. So it looks like they're really good about sending private messages because they 23% of them versus the benchmark of 6%. Cheers for admins. It looks like their admins aren't actually sending a lot of cheers, and the users aren't sending cheers. So those are problem areas that the CSMs could then urge them to say, hey, if you want to get your response rate up, you need to start maybe cheersing more and potentially start using tags so that you can use the product a little bit better. Yep. Mm-hmm. So the average response rate could do week by week by week, and it could be that some users were added all at once or something. That's a very weird stat that I would have to dig into because that is something weird. But potentially, yeah, I would have to look at how their response rate and their user rate has actually changed over time, because it could be that they had a big jump or something might have happened to make that weird. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if I pull it back to all time, I'd have to run the report again, which does takes a little bit of time to actually pull that data. But if I go to admin activity, 17661, we can actually see days since last request, number of private messages, the segment they're in, their user ID if you really care for their ID. But essentially, you could just sort this and say, oh man, this person here, they are not actually doing anything. They haven't logged in since whenever. And it could be that they aren't actually part of the account anymore. Admins in the actual TinyPulse app are not as easy to deactivate. You could deactivate the user really easily, but then the admin itself is not often deactivated. So could be why they're on this list. Yeah. Deactivated admins potentially are because, well, there's two different tables in the database. There's the receivers database, and then there's the users or admins database. There, for each receiver, they get turned into a user and admin, and then the receiver could be deactivated, but that admin user still exists, so they could potentially still log in to TinyPulse. So you would have to deactivate the user separately. And I think that just might be something old in the database that no one has gotten around to fixing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't remember. I want to say that they are left out. I would have to check my code again. I want to say that if they are deactivated in the users, that they should not be in this list. All right, so moving on to another app. So for sales, how can I provide monetary value for a product very quickly? Basically ROI. So I've built a really simple calculator. It's actually, there's a link to this now on our homepage, which is pretty neat. But essentially what this does is it takes the number of employees that they've got, the average salary of employees, the average yearly turnover percent, and then we think about how much we can actually reduce their turnover by using TinyPulse, and it tells you how much they're likely to save by using TinyPulse because they're not hiring new employees and doing all that stuff, and they just have to pay for TinyPulse. Yes. Yep. That was based on the case study. Yep, so the average salary is based on the median median average salary, or the median salary for 2014. I've got the notes here. Then how much it actually costs to rehire depends, from this study that I'm linking, depends on the average salary. So people that are less than 3,000, it only costs about 16% of their salary to actually replace them. When you get to the mid-moderate paying jobs, it's about 20%, and then higher paying jobs can actually be as much as twice their annual salary just to replace them, just to get them onboarded and all of that sort of stuff. And it's from this this study that was done. So if you send this information to clients, you actually have the sources for that information. And average yearly turnover percent is also based on some study that was done that calculated out to an average of 16.4%. So you have some really good defaults here to use. And really, you would only really have to change number of employees, and as this scales up, it'll go up. And I mean, you could tweak the reduction to be, let's say you're thinking you can only reduce their turnover by 25%. You're still saving $31,000 a year by just only having 100 employees. If you scale this up to 1,000 employees, now you're saving, $319,000. According to the calculator, anyway. This is not a promise; it's just an estimate, essentially. So very, very quick. Hopefully, it's intuitive to use so that you guys can actually have information. You could screenshot this and send it out to your clients. This is a really quick and dirty ROI calculation. And then my last use case would be, how can I provide some extra value to larger clients? And that would be custom analytics. I recently revamped this app quite a lot because it used to be a data dump. Now it's an actual exploratory app that lets you dig into an organization's data. So as it's booting up, let's look back for HubSpot. Again, it was this one, HubSpot sales. No data available. All right, let's do Stitch Fix because I like that one. 814. So if we look at Stitch Fix and we think, all right, let's pull Stitch Fix's data from a year ago until now. So May 2015, June 2015. Let's do June 2015 until now. And for now, this gives, this tab, you get all just breakdowns of all the different scores for all the different questions by all their segments. You can filter out segments so that you only isolate a couple of them. But the real benefit of this comes in the correlations so that you can find pairs of variables that relate together to each other. So for example, what are the drivers of happiness for a particular organization? So you would come to this correlation table, and right here, look for pairs with values that are greater than 0.50. Indicates a strong relationship. So if we look on this tab, we can see this question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much fun do you have working here? 0.68 is related to Q8, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? So these questions are related to each other. So if we really wanted to dig deeper, relationship plots. Scale this back again to June. And then we just pick those two questions. So how much fun do you have working here? And how happy are you? And it creates a scatter plot visual that you can then add in like a PowerPoint or something. You can actually click in here to change all of this text so that you can, get rid of that, the 1 to 10, and just say, how happy are you at work? You can remove the trend line if you really don't want that in there. If you think about the question, each individual question is a scale of 1 to 10. So really, this is how the scatter plot should look, which is not at all useful. So this jitter allows you to spread the points around from their sources to see how the clustering looks so that you can actually get a much better visual of the trend there. And then below it, you actually have some information on the results of the test so that you can actually talk to say, hey, there was a correlation there, it was significant, and there is a strong relationship there, with a little mini stats lesson below so that you know what's going on. Not currently. mainly because it's based on the dates of questions. And so, yeah, different orgs at different dates. But that's something that I could potentially add, just a different tab of just in general, so that people could just explore our relationships between data. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're looking at pairs of question responses rather than totally anonymous, isolated aggregate scores. So it does peel back just a little bit of layer there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's essentially the end of my just general overview of the apps. I didn't want to make this like a let's go over every single app and tell you how to do every single thing in them. I just wanted to kind of give you guys just a general overview of what is available and what kinds of things are available. And everybody has access to this specific link, the Shiny Hub. And I'll send it out to everybody in an email. That way you're reminded of it. And as I said before, each app has its own specific permissions. For now, it's something that I plan on working in the future to literally put everything on one application, but it's going to take a really long time to do. So for now, each app has individual permissions. So I'm going to encourage you guys to go to this place, read up about the different apps. There's images for each one of them. It just kind of just shows what the actual app looks like, so that you might think, what am I getting myself into before I ask for permission? Do I really want something like this at all? I don't mind putting everybody on the apps that they want. It's just, I got to know which apps that everybody wants so that I can add everybody to each app. I can't just like say, add this person to all. It doesn't work like that. I have to do individual, but I'm happy to do each one. Just let me know which. Maybe. Yeah. Yep. So does anybody have any questions about the apps that I showed, or whether or not a certain kind of app exists already? Like, what do you guys want to see in terms of the data that you don't have access to currently? That might be in the admin database. It might live in HubSpot. It might live in Salesforce. What do you guys want to know? And if you guys don't have anything now, just think about it, because I'm constantly adding these. Mm-hmm.
How old are they?
Mm-hmm. Yes, as long as revenue in our database is reliable. And it's been sketchy every now and then. Sometimes it's exactly what it needs to be, and then other times the numbers are totally off. So yeah, it's mainly that our database isn't always what it should be as far as that number there. Other tools like QuickBooks and Stripe, those are much on their own reliable, much more reliable. It's just sometimes they're not lined up. So I don't know. It depends on if that sort of thing has an API that's accessible to Honor, which maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. If I just have a CSV that I'm pulling in, then I have a script that would just manage the CSV into certain things, adding in data admin database information, creating an object, and then that object just gets updated once a month. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. The business metrics, no. The business metrics was pulling from information that Cindy would give me about like expenses and information like that, merging it into our admin database, looking at MRR that we'd be pulling in. I don't have the database information after March is the main issue, but I do have new MRR in there, number of subscriptions, ARPU, CAC, and all of that sort of stuff. But it really just depends on getting that information from Cindy, which I believe right now we've changed it from a monthly basis to a quarterly basis, if I even get that sort of stuff anymore, just because it's slowing her bandwidth down and all of that. So I'm going to end up changing this app to be not expenses related and just data that is in the admin database. That way it can update in real time, and then secondary data from Cindy could be done separately. You could take ARPU and then add in expenses to figure out like CAC and all of that. So this sort of information is here, it's just old. Yeah, one of the things I want to add to that, like the Super CSM app that you can get like the report card and whatnot on, one of the things I'd like to add would be a way to add multiple organizations as one data pull so that you can have aggregate and comparisons. Yeah. Yeah, so that's something that I plan on adding. I just haven't figured out how I'm actually going to do it yet. Right. So let's see. So I've got something similar to that with this data or this app. This question benchmarks app is meant to be just aggregating all the scores from anytime this question has been answered, it aggregates everybody's scores together from all orgs just to get an average mean. And it's really kind of a tool for example, for PR to dig deeper into certain data to compare it. It's not as good for CSMs to talk to admins about it because this benchmark is going to be slightly different from the benchmark they see in the actual app just because of how it's calculated. But yeah, this one it's pretty useful. It takes a while to load up because it's pulling every single survey response. Kind of. It doesn't really know what it's supposed to do. Yeah. True. Yep. So for now, you've got, this is just literally right now, this is just a list of every single question split across all industries. And then, yep, it's going to re-pool the data. So I'll do submit it and then filters it. No. It's different. Yep. But Ryan, what this can do though, is it just means that those responses are not pooled into this app. That's not to say that you couldn't tell Yahoo, all right, for that question, if we look at all orgs for value, for example, how would you rate your organization on the value of integrity? There's the question. They might have changed it, but you still have the average as 8. And then below right here, if you enter in the actual numbers from TinyPulse, and then you can add in a comparison number, it'll actually tell you whether or not there's a statistical difference between those, so that you know whether or not there was an actual significant difference between the benchmarks. Yep, question benchmarks. Yep. Yeah, and for the most part, as far as how I've been developing apps, you know, if someone says, "Hey, can you pull me data for XYZ?" and I'll pull it and send it to them. They ask me the same. Somebody else asked me the same sort of question again. I'll say, "Yeah, I'll pull it to them." But then the third time somebody asks me for that, typically I'll just make an app, because if 3 people or if one person asks 3 times, chances are they're going to continue to ask. So I probably will be making an app for it. So that's just data pull stuff. So. Maybe. Yep. It's close. Here. Yep. Anthony, I'll show you what I've got so far with the funnel, what I've been working on. All those filters and whatnot. It's in here. So, oh, let's stretch the screen. That sucks. I'll have to fix that. Anyway, so here's our pipeline right now. Based on this date range, you can split it by granularity, and it would, you know, display all the different sources, the channels that things are coming from, with different levels of granularity. So minor has pretty big buckets, moderate is even larger buckets, etc. And then with these granularity switches, you can filter in, you know, we can just look at marketing driven data. And now we have this filter is only marketing driven data. And then if we want to get more specific, let's just look at organic search. And now it updates by organic search. Even more, organic branded search or just generic organic search. Now it updates even more. Filter characteristics, we've got different sizes that we can have based on what Salesforce has, the product that they are interested in, the contacts that we know of them. That one I haven't added in yet. Marketing filters, for Kevin, I've added trial conducted in this section just because I want you to be able to have this quickly. Sales behaviors, BDR involved, SDR involved, demo conducted, money bag sent, whether or not the close date was pushed multiple times. The eventual goal of having all of these characteristics is to actually create a much better lead scoring model than I can create in HubSpot. So that's why a lot of this data that you guys are pulling in Salesforce and logging all those activities, it's being used somewhat in this and then being used in lead scoring. So it's extremely important to constantly keep up with those things. Like, I'm sure, Dustin, you've added a whole bunch of new fields because of this, saying like trial conducted and demo done. It's really important to be tracking those things like accurately, because then it goes into this, and then this can end up turning into a really well-predicted sales scoring model. Same with opportunity scoring model as well. Yep. And it also has that sort of same funnel data, you know, leads, created opportunities, stages, and all of that. And we have all that sort of stuff plotted out. So number of new opportunities, leads, we can see how that has changed over time. The new ones, new discoveries. So that way we can see potentially where the spikes are, where the drops are, and then things like conversion rates, omitted to pipeline. How has that changed over time? All right, so it looks like we're trending down on that. What's the cause of that? Well, we have to think about that and think, all right, why are we getting this conversion rate down? Is it because we're actually generating more at the top of the funnel than we've had before, which is actually the case, which is why this is gone down. Other conversion rates, you know, just because the data only goes so far. From like, it goes from when I extract the data to up until here. So it could be that I just don't have data for any opportunities created at whatever certain date or something. It's just a restriction from me pulling the data manually. The goal eventually, though, is to integrate with Salesforce's API so that this becomes real time and whatnot. So eventual goal. And then there's this big long list about a bunch of terms that maybe you haven't heard of, maybe you have, but there's that. And then this tab would be every single lead and opportunity listed out with information for them, just so that you can check to see how things are being scored and whatnot, filter the data out, whatever. Salesforce has that capability probably much better because they have more variables there, but this data would end up having a slimmer view of that. It's currently out right now. It just doesn't have some of these filter features in there. I plan on having all these filter features done maybe Friday, tomorrow. It depends on how things come up, but certainly by Monday, I'll have these filters done so that you guys can start using them and filtering the data out. Yep. Yep. So any other questions about apps, about what I can make, what is available? If you think that you have an idea of what you want to see that you think exists in the database or HubSpot or whatever, let me know, because if you're spending a lot of time doing something, hours to do something that just is involving data pulls and management, let me know, because I could see if I could automate that into an app so that it saves you hours instead of having you to waste hours and hours and hours on and on and on. I could do it once and then it's done. I don't, only because Cheers Network, I'm not sure its use yet. I don't know if it's going in water cooler or not. Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay, cool. So, a big web. Yep. Yeah, this is pretty neat. So this is a network of our cheers. Links together between people. Thicker lines mean there's more cheers sent between people. We can split by segments, different colors. So for example, let's find me. All right, there I am. So it looks like Cody Lemons has sent me at least 2 cheers, or at least we've sent cheers back and forth twice to each other in order to bridge that path between us. We can cut this with only 1 cheer, but then it becomes a giant mess of cheers because we do a lot of cheersing to each other. If we pull it back even further to the beginning of January and cut it down to maybe 3 cheers, we can start to see patterns of people that, like, all right, these people are definitely connected to each other and talking to each other. For example, you know, this team, the Perform team, you can see that they're cheersing each other with each other a lot because they're all connected together. Where some of our teams, you got some purples here, you got some browns, some red. Seems like we're very cross team cheersing a lot. And then you can also recognize, all right, the left side here looks like it's all of Vietnam. The right side looks like it's a lot of the US. Who are the people that are bridging these gaps? Erica, Morgan, BJ. So those people are sending lots of cross seas cheers in order to show up on this. It's a pretty neat thing. I just don't know. I mean, you guys can access the app. I just don't know as much how you would show it to a client and just say, here you go, without a lot of explanation between it. Because on its own, looking at it, it's kind of hard to just say, what does this mean? You know, what does this mean right now, aside from being cool looking? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.